The smell of burnt oil clung to Daniel Hart's clothes as he crawled out from under the old gravity stabilizer. His back hurt, his hands were black with grease, and his stomach growled louder than the engine he had just fixed. For 20 hours he had been working without rest on the floating royal station of Veladris, the most glittering palace in the Solari Empire. Daniel was a human from one of Earth's poorest outer colonies. The Solari nobles had hired him only because no alien engineer could fix the broken stabilizer fast enough. Daniel had done the job in half the time, but no one had thanked him. No one had even offered him water. He wiped his face with a rag and looked around the silver hallway. Somewhere in this station there had to be a quiet place to eat his cold sandwich. He followed the smell of polished marble and clean air until he found a long empty hall with a single round table at its center. Soft golden light fell on the chairs. A tall window showed the stars outside. The hall was peaceful. Daniel did not see any signs, did not read any warnings. He simply walked in, sat at the round table, and pulled out his bread, dried meat, and half a bottle of water. He took a slow bite and closed his eyes. The bread was hard, but to a tired man it tasted like heaven. He did not know that he was sitting at the forbidden table. The forbidden table belonged only to the imperial princess of the Solari Empire. For 500 years, no creature in the galaxy except those she invited had ever been allowed to sit there. The punishment for breaking this rule was death. Daniel chewed quietly. Then the doors at the far end of the hall opened with a soft hiss. Princess Leora walked in first. She was tall and slim, with skin the color of pale silver and long hair that shimmered like a river of starlight. She wore a simple white gown, not the heavy royal robes she wore in public. Behind her came 4 royal guards in black armor, their hands resting on the hilts of energy blades. Leora stopped. Her violet eyes went wide. A human. A dirty human, sitting at her table, eating bread. The guards reacted in a flash. They drew their blades. The blue light of the energy edges filled the hall. "You filth!" the first guard shouted. "You dare sit at the royal table?" The second guard rushed forward, ready to strike Daniel down where he sat. But Daniel did not run. He did not even stand up. He looked at the angry guard, then at the princess, then back at his sandwich. He swallowed his bite slowly. "I'm sorry," he said in a calm voice. "Is this seat taken?" The guards froze. Nobody in the history of the Empire had ever spoken to the princess that way. No bow, no fear, no begging. Just a tired man asking a simple question. Princess Leora raised one slender hand. The guard stopped. She walked closer, studying Daniel with curious eyes. She had seen many strange creatures in her life. Lords who hid daggers behind smiles. Generals who flattered her with empty words. But never a man who looked at her like she was just another person. "Do you know who I am?" she asked softly. Daniel looked at her crown, then at her gown, then at the 4 armed guards behind her. He gave a tired smile. "Someone important, I guess," he said. "Sorry, I didn't see a sign on the table. I just needed a place to sit." The princess almost laughed. She caught herself just in time. "And what is your name, human?" she asked. "Daniel Hart," he said. "I fix engines." He held out half of his bread. "You want some?" "It's not great, but it's something." The guards gasped. Even offering food to a royal was a serious offense. One of them stepped forward to drag Daniel away, but Princess Leora raised her hand again. The guard stopped at once. She stared at the piece of bread in Daniel's hand. Then she did something no Solari princess had done in 5 centuries. She sat down. The 4 guards turned pale. The hall went silent. Leora reached out, took the bread from Daniel's hand, and held it carefully like it was a strange jewel. "Thank you, Daniel Hart," she whispered. Daniel nodded and took another bite of his own bread. "Long day," he said. "I fixed your gravity machine. It's good for another 10 years now." "That was you?" she asked, surprised. "That was me," he said. "Took 20 hours. Worth it, I guess. Quiet here. Pretty stars." Leora looked out the window at the silver stars. Then she looked back at the tired human in front of her. He had grease on his cheek. His clothes were old. His eyes were honest. Behind a hidden wall above the hall, the Empress of the Solari Empire watched the whole scene through a glass panel. Her oldest advisor stood beside her, trembling. "Your Majesty," the advisor whispered, "the human must be executed at once. He has broken sacred law." The Empress did not answer for a long time. She watched her daughter, who was smiling. Truly smiling. For the first time in years. "No," the Empress finally said. "Do not kill him yet." The advisor bowed low. "Your wisdom is endless, Majesty." What should we do with him? The Empress smiled a cold, thin smile. We will keep him close, she said. Very close, and we will see what kind of human dares to share his bread with a princess. Down in the hall, Daniel laughed at something Leora said, and the future of the Solari Empire began to change. News of the forbidden table spread through the royal station like wildfire on dry grass. By morning, every noble, every servant, and every guard on Veladris had heard the impossible story. A human, a dirty mechanic from Earth, had sat at the princess's sacred table. Worse, he had offered her bread. Worst of all, she had eaten it. Inside the great council hall, 60 noble lords stood in a circle, shouting at each other. Their robes were heavy with gold thread, and their faces were red with anger. Execute him! Cried Lord Delvin, an old noble with sharp teeth. Burn him in front of the whole station, shouted Lady Cora, her eyes bright with rage. He has stained 500 years of tradition, roared a third. At the head of the hall, sitting on a tall silver throne, the Empress watched them in silence. Her hands rested on the arms of the chair. Her face showed nothing. A few steps below her stood Daniel Hart, still in his old work clothes. He had not even been given a chance to wash. His hands were still black with grease from the night before. Two guards stood beside him, but he did not look afraid. He just looked tired. Princess Leora stood on the other side of the throne. She wore her royal robes now, heavy and stiff, but her eyes were fixed on Daniel. She wanted to speak. She wanted to shout that this was wrong, but she knew the rules. She had to wait for her mother. The Empress finally raised one hand. The hall went silent at once. Daniel, Heart of Earth, she said in a slow, deep voice. Do you know what you have done? Daniel looked up at her. I ate a sandwich, Your Majesty, he said simply. I'm sorry if that was wrong. A few nobles gasped at his casual tone. One almost fainted. You sat at the forbidden table, the Empress said. You spoke to the princess without a bow. You offered her your food. Each of these things alone is enough to end your life. Daniel was quiet for a moment. I didn't know about the table, he said. I really am sorry about that. As for the bow, well, I was tired. And about the food, she looked hungry. Where I come from, we share food when someone looks hungry. That's all. The hall whispered. Some lords laughed cruelly. Others shook their heads. The Empress leaned forward. And where do you come from, human? A small colony called Bright Rock, Daniel said. It's a dust world. Not much there. But people are kind. We fix things. We share things. We try to be good to each other. Princess Leora bit her lip. Something in her chest hurt. Lord Telvin stepped forward, his teeth flashing. Your Majesty, his words are poison. He speaks of sharing with the royal blood. He must die today. The Empress turned her cold eyes to him. Telvin sat down at once. I will decide who dies, the Empress said softly. Then she looked at Daniel again. You are a mechanic, yes? A fixer of machines? Yes, Majesty. Good, the Empress said. Then I have a punishment for you, Daniel Hart. You will not die. Not today. Instead, you will serve as the personal mechanic of Princess Leora. You will fix every broken thing in her chambers. You will work in silence. You will not speak to her unless she speaks first. You will sleep in the servant quarters. You will eat with the cleaners. If you fail, or if you ever again forget your place, your life ends. Do you understand? Daniel bowed his head a little. Not a deep bow, but a respectful one. I understand, Majesty, he said. Thank you for letting me keep my life. The nobles murmured. They were not happy, but they did not dare argue. The Empress had spoken, but Princess Leora's heart was beating fast. Her mother had not killed him. Her mother had given him to her. She tried to hide the small smile that touched her lips. Daniel was led away by the guards. As he passed her, he gave her a quick, kind look. Just a look. Nothing more. But it was enough. That evening, in the highest chamber of the station, the Empress stood at her window, watching the stars. Her oldest advisor came in quietly. Your Majesty, he said, forgive me. But why did you spare the human? He is dangerous. The Empress did not turn around. Because my daughter smiled, she said. I have not seen her smile in 6 years. Not since her father died. The advisor was silent. The court treats her like a doll, the Empress went on. They bow and lie and flatter. They do not see her. This human, this dirty little mechanic saw her. He saw a tired girl who needed bread, and he gave it to her. She turned to face her advisor. He is a test, she said. Not for him. For her. I want to know what kind of queen my daughter will become, and I want to know what kind of creature this human truly is. The advisor bowed and left. In the small servant room far below, Daniel sat on a hard cot. He looked at his tool bag, the only thing he owned. He did not feel sad. He did not feel scared. He had food, a bed, and work to do. That was enough. He did not know yet how much he would change, and he did not know that 3 floors above him, Princess Leora was lying in her huge royal bed, looking at the ceiling and thinking about a man who had asked if her seat was taken. For the first time in years, she felt awake. 3 weeks passed. In the royal wing of Veladris, things began to change in small ways that no one could quite explain. The air filters in the princess's chambers, which had hummed and rattled for years, now ran in perfect silence. The old solar wings on the east tower, which had been broken for 2 seasons, now opened and closed smoothly. Even the music box in the royal library, a gift from a dead king long ago, began to play again after 20 years of silence. The servants whispered among themselves. They had a new word for the human. They called him the quiet fixer. Daniel woke up every morning before sunrise. He ate plain porridge with the cleaners in the lower kitchen. The cleaners were old aliens with rough skin and tired eyes, and at first they did not trust the human. But Daniel did not speak much. He just nodded, ate his food, and listened. After a few days, an old cleaner named Myrna offered him an extra piece of fruit. He smiled and shared it with her in 2 halves. After that, the cleaners began saving him a seat every morning. He treated the cooks with the same respect. He thanked the guards who let him pass. He bowed politely to the senior maid who brought fresh towels to the princess's chambers. He even said good morning to the floor cleaning robots, though they did not answer back. This was strange behavior for a human, and stranger still for any worker on the royal station. In the Solari Empire, the lower you stood, the lower you bowed, and you never spoke to those above without being asked. But Daniel spoke to everyone the same. A general got the same nod as a kitchen boy. At first, the noble lords laughed at him. Then they grew uneasy, because the servants began to copy him. Slowly, quietly, the cooks began smiling at the cleaners. The cleaners began helping the guards carry heavy boxes. The guards began thanking the cooks for hot meals. It was small, almost invisible, but the air on the royal station felt different. Lighter, warmer, and Princess Leora noticed. She had begun to find reasons to walk through the working halls. At first, she pretended she was just curious. But everyone knew the truth. She wanted to see Daniel. One afternoon, she found him on his back under a broken cooling unit in the great gallery. Only his legs were sticking out. She stood there for a moment, holding her royal robes carefully. Daniel, she said. Just a second, came a muffled voice. Hand me the small blue wire, please. He did not know who he was talking to. He thought she was an assistant. Leora looked at the toolbox by his feet. She picked up a small blue wire. She knelt down, ignoring the dust on her dress, and passed it under the machine. Thanks, he said. A moment later, the machine hummed back to life. Daniel pushed himself out from under it, wiped his hands on a rag, and looked up. His eyes went wide. Your Highness. I'm sorry, I didn't know it was you. I would never have asked you to. But Leora was smiling. A real smile. It is all right, Daniel Hart, she said. I liked it. I want to know how it works. Will you teach me? Daniel paused. He looked at her royal robes, her crown, her perfect skin. Then he looked at her hopeful eyes. All right, he said. But you have to promise me one thing. What? You can't wear that dress when we work. It will get ruined. We need simple clothes, sleeves rolled up, hair tied back. Deal? Leora's smile grew. Deal, she said. After that day, the princess sneaked out of her royal duties whenever she could. She wore plain gray work clothes that Myrna the cleaner secretly brought her. She tied her silver hair into a simple braid. Daniel showed her how to hold a wrench, how to test a wire, how to listen to a machine and know what was wrong just by the sound it made. She was bad at first. She broke 2 screws. She burned her finger on a hot circuit. She cried a little, then laughed, then tried again. Daniel never scolded her. He just said, try again. That is how we learn. Leora had been taught by the finest tutors in the galaxy. She knew 6 languages. She knew the history of 1,000 words. But none of those teachers had ever told her, try again. They had only ever told her, you are perfect, princess. And now, for the first time, she felt something better than perfect. She felt useful. But the noble lords watched, and they were not happy. Duke Varan, the strongest lord in the Eastern Quarter, called a secret meeting in his private chambers. 12 angry nobles sat around his table. The human is poisoning her, Varan said in a cold voice. Have you seen her hands? They have small cuts on them. They have grease under the nails. The future queen of the Solari Empire is becoming a common worker. The Empress will not act, said Lady Cora. She has gone soft. Then we will act, Baron said. He looked at each of them. The human cannot stay. He must die. But it must look like an accident, something the Empress cannot blame on us. The lords nodded slowly. That night, far below in his small room, Daniel cleaned his tools by candlelight. He hummed an old Earth song. He had no idea that 12 powerful aliens had just chosen the day of his death. But 3 floors above him, Princess Leora lay in her bed and smiled at the small cut on her thumb. It was the proudest mark she had ever worn. The Star Festival came once every 10 years. It was the greatest night in the Solari Empire. On this single evening, the royal station of Villadris drifted out into a wide field of dancing stars, and a million lights from a million worlds were lit at the same moment. Lords and ladies from every corner of the galaxy gathered in their finest robes. Music filled every hall. The air smelled of sweet wine, glowing fruit, and strange flowers. Princess Leora wore a long blue gown that shimmered like the deep sea. Her silver hair was braided with tiny moonstones. She stood beside her mother on the high balcony, smiling at the crowd. But her real smile was hidden. It was for the man she had spoken to that morning, a tired mechanic who had whispered, "Save me a dance if you can." Far below, Daniel Hart was not at the party. He was deep in the engine bay, his hands black with oil, finishing one last check on the station's core systems. Myrna, the old cleaner, had brought him a small cup of warm soup an hour ago. He thanked her with a quiet smile. He did not know that Duke Varen had already set his trap. At 20 minutes past the 8th hour, the lights of Villadris flickered. The music stopped. The dancers froze. A deep, awful sound rolled through the station. The core engine, the heart of the station, gave a terrible cough. Then another. Then it began to scream. In the high command room, alarms exploded. Red lights spun. Screens showed an asteroid field, deadly rocks the size of mountains drifting straight toward Veladris. The station was off course. Its engines were dying. In 30 minutes, the station and every soul on it would be torn apart. General Vance, the chief engineer, slammed his fists on the control panel. It's locked. Every command is locked. Someone has placed a code lock from the inside. The Empress stood up from her throne. Her face was pale, but her voice was steel. "Find Daniel Hart," she said. "Now." Princess Leora's heart stopped. She turned and ran from the balcony, her blue gown flying behind her. Guards shouted at her to stop. She did not listen. She ran down the long stairs, through the silent ballroom, past frozen nobles, all the way to the lower decks. She found him already running toward the engine bay. He had heard the alarms. He had a tool bag over his shoulder and grease still on his cheek. His eyes were sharp and quiet. "Daniel," she cried. He grabbed her hands. "Listen," he said quickly. "Go back to the command room. Tell them to open the inner vent panel of the second engine ring. I am going inside." "Inside the engine?" Her voice shook. "Daniel, no! It is burning hot. No one can survive that." "Someone has to," he said. He smiled at her. A small, calm smile. "Don't worry, Princess. I fix things." He kissed her hand. Just once. Then he ran. The engine bay was a place of fire and metal. Daniel pulled on a thin heat suit, but he knew it would not be enough. He took a deep breath and crawled into the inner vent. For the next 20 minutes, the station listened. The Empress, the Princess, the nobles, the cleaners, even the guards, everyone stood in silence as the speakers carried the sounds of Daniel's breathing. He coughed. He grunted. Sometimes he laughed softly when something went well. "Almost there," his voice whispered through the system. "I see the lock." "Old code." "Bad job. I can break it." In the command room, Leora pressed her hands against the cold glass and prayed. Daniel reached the heart of the engine. The metal floor burned his knees through the suit. His skin was wet with sweat. The lock was a small black box wired into the main pipe. He saw the signature on the side of it. A small silver mark. The crest of House Varen. Daniel smiled grimly. "Got you, Duke," he whispered. He pulled out his smallest tool. With careful hands, he cut 3 wires, twisted 2, and pressed a single button. The black box clicked. The lock died. The whole station shook. The engine roared back to life. In the command room, General Vance let out a great shout. "Engines online. We have power. Turning now." The station turned slowly, painfully, away from the asteroid field. The huge rocks passed by the great windows, so close that some nobles could see the dust on their surface. Then they were gone. Veladris was safe. A great cheer rose through every hall, but the cheer faded fast. Daniel did not answer the speaker. He had crawled halfway back through the vent before he collapsed. His suit was burned. His lungs were full of smoke. He pulled himself the last few feet on his elbows, fell out of the vent, and lay still on the cold metal floor of the engine bay. The doors flew open. Princess Leora, still in her torn blue gown, ran across the burning floor and dropped to her knees beside him. She did not care about her dress. She did not care about the watching guards. She did not care about her crown. She lifted his head into her lap. Tears fell on his soot-covered face. Daniel, she whispered. Daniel, please, open your eyes. Slowly his eyes opened. He looked up at her. He saw the moonstones in her hair. He saw the tears on her cheeks. Hey, princess, he whispered with a tired smile. Sorry I missed your dance. She laughed and cried at the same time. And in the highest chamber, the Empress watched this on a screen. Her advisor stood beside her, pale. What now, Majesty? The Empress's voice was hard as ice. Now we put Duke Veron on trial. 2 weeks after the Night of Fire, the great hall of Veladris was full of every noble in the empire. The trial was the biggest event in 500 years. The walls were hung with silver banners. Long rows of polished benches held the lords and ladies. Reporters from 100 worlds floated in glass boxes above, their cameras blinking. Outside the station, 6 royal warships circled in silent guard. At the center of the hall stood 2 raised platforms. On one stood Duke Varon, his hands chained in golden cuffs, his face still proud but his eyes nervous. On the other stood Daniel Hart in a simple gray suit, his burned hands healing slowly. The Empress sat above them on her silver throne. Princess Leora sat beside her in a plain white gown, no jewels, no crown. She had refused them all. The trial of Duke Varon came first. The evidence was clear. The black lockbox from the engine carried his family crest. 3 of his servants had confessed. 5 secret letters had been found in his chamber, all planning Daniel's death and the sabotage of the station. Duke Varon tried to defend himself. He shouted that the human was a poison. He shouted that he had only tried to save the Empire from a low creature. The Empress let him finish. Then she spoke just one sentence. Duke Varon of the Eastern Quarter, you are stripped of your title, your lands, and your name. You will spend the rest of your life on the prison moon of Courses. 2 guards dragged him away. He looked at Daniel with hate in his eyes as he passed. Then the hall went silent, and every eye turned to the second platform. Daniel Hart was now on trial. A tall noble in red robes stood up. He was Lord Senric, the Empire's chief judge. Daniel Hart of Earth, Senric said in a cold voice, you have saved the royal station. For this, the Empire owes you a debt, but there is still the matter of your first crime. Leora gripped the arms of her seat. You sat at the forbidden table. You spoke to the princess without respect for her rank. You have taught her to work like a common servant. You have placed your low hands on the royal blood. The law of the Empire is clear. For these crimes, the punishment is banishment forever. The nobles murmured. Many nodded. They thought this was fair. Senric turned to Daniel. Speak, human. Defend yourself if you can. Daniel stepped forward. He looked tired. His face was thin from the long days in the medical wing, but his eyes were clear and calm. Your honors, he said, I am not a clever man. I am not a noble. I am not a soldier. I just fix things. So I will speak simply. He took a breath. Where I come from, we do not have golden tables. We do not have crowns or thrones. My home, Bright Rock, is a dusty colony. We have one school. We have one well. We share our water. When a child falls, any adult picks them up. When a man is sick, his neighbor feeds him. We do not have much, but what we have, we share. He looked up at the watching nobles. On my world, we say that every life has the same worth. The life of a mechanic. The life of a princess. The life of a cleaner who brought me warm soup when no one else cared if I lived or died. They all matter. He looked at Princess Leora. I did not teach the princess to be common. She taught me what kindness looks like in a crown. I only showed her that her hands could fix things, that she did not have to be alone. The hall was so quiet that the soft hum of the lights could be heard. Banish me if the law says so, Daniel said. I will not fight it, but I will say this. The princess is not the one who has been changed. You have. Look at your station. The cooks smile now. The cleaners stand straight. The guards thank the kitchen boys. Your great empire has not fallen. It has only grown a little kinder. And that is not a crime. He stepped back. Princess Leora stood up from her chair. Mother, she said in a clear voice. The Empress turned to her. If you banish him, Leora said, I will go with him. Gasps filled the hall. Nobles half stood, their robes rustling. Lord Cendric's mouth fell open. I will give up my crown. I will give up my throne. I will give up my name. He is the only friend who ever looked at me and saw a person. If the Empire cannot keep him, then the Empire cannot keep me either. The Empress was silent for a long time. She looked at her daughter. She looked at Daniel. She looked at the hundreds of waiting faces. Then slowly she rose from her throne. For 500 years, she said, the Forbidden Table has been a sign of our greatness. But greatness without kindness is only loneliness. I have watched my empire become cold. I have watched my own daughter starve in a hall full of food. She raised her hand. From this day, the forbidden table is gone. In its place, I declare a new law. The law of the shared table. Every citizen of the Solari Empire, from the highest lord to the lowest worker, may eat together as equals. The hall was silent. Then from the back, one old cleaner clapped her hands. It was Myrna. Soon the whole hall joined her, and Daniel Hart, the tired mechanic from a dusty colony, simply lowered his head and smiled. 5 years went by. The royal station of Veladris had not moved. The same silver towers still floated among the same bright stars. The same long halls still stretched through the same polished marble. From the outside, nothing seemed different, but inside, everything had changed. The Empress was older now. Her hair had turned the color of soft snow. She no longer ruled from a high cold throne. She walked among her people, slow and gentle, with a small wooden cane in her hand. The crown still sat on her head, but it was lighter than before. She had given much of her work to her daughter. Princess Leora was no longer just a princess. The Empire called her by a new title given by the people, not by the nobles. They called her the Kind Queen. She had earned the name. Over 5 long years, she had visited every quarter of the station. She had eaten in the kitchens with the cooks. She had cleaned the floors with the cleaners on the day Myrna had grown too old to work alone. She had stood in the engine bay with the workers and listened to their problems. She had written new laws that lifted the lowest workers out of poverty, that gave the cleaners proper homes, that paid the cooks fair wages. And she had done all of it with a small silver wrench hanging from her belt, the first one Daniel had ever given her. As for Daniel Hart, he had not changed much. He still woke up before sunrise. He still wore plain clothes. He still had grease under his nails. But his title was new. He was now the chief royal engineer of the Solari Empire. His old toolbox sat next to a grand desk in a great workshop. He lived in a small set of rooms near the engine bay. He had refused the grand chambers offered to him. He said he slept better near the humming sound of working machines. Every night after her long day of ruling, Princess Leora came to those small rooms to share a simple meal with him. Sometimes it was bread and dried meat. Sometimes it was soup. Once a week, old Myrna cooked for them both. They had not yet married. Leora had said she did not want a great royal wedding. She wanted something quiet. Daniel had said he was happy to wait. But on this day, the 5th anniversary of the night they had first met, something special was planned. Princess Leora walked through the long halls of Veladris in a simple grey dress. No jewels, no crown, just a small silver pin shaped like a wrench hanging over her heart. She walked toward the old hall where 5 years ago a tired human had asked, "Is this seat taken?" The hall had been changed. The single round table was still there, but around it now stretched 100 more tables. Long ones, short ones, big ones, small ones. They filled the great hall from wall to wall. The grand window that showed the stars was still the same. Every chair was full. The cooks were there in clean white aprons. The cleaners were there with their tired smiles. The guards were there with their helmets in their laps. The mechanics were there with grease on their hands. The lords and ladies were there too, but they were mixed in. A duke sat beside a kitchen boy. A countess shared bread with a floor cleaner. The empress sat between two old gardeners, laughing at something one of them said. In the middle of all this, at the original round table, sat Daniel Hart. He looked up as Leora entered. He stood, smiled, and held out his hand. "Hey, princess," he said. "Save me a seat?" Leora laughed. Tears filled her eyes, but they were happy tears. She walked to him and took his hand. "Always," she said. They sat down together. Daniel pulled out a small loaf of bread, the same kind he had carried that first night, hard and plain. He tore it in half. He gave her the bigger piece. The whole hall watched in silence. Then someone clapped. Then everyone clapped. The sound rose and rose like a great warm wave, filling the station, filling the stars, filling every corner of the empire. Leora looked around at the laughing faces, the shining eyes, the mixing of every rank and every species. She looked at her mother, smiling. She looked at old Myrna, sitting beside a young, noble girl who was helping her cut her food. Then she looked at Daniel. He was already looking at her. I have been thinking, he said softly, only for her to hear. 5 years ago, I just wanted a place to sit and eat my sandwich. And now, she whispered. And now I have a whole empire to eat with, he said. But I would trade them all for one more night of just bread, just stars, and just you. Leora's eyes filled with tears again. She leaned over and rested her head on his shoulder. You changed everything, she whispered. Daniel shook his head slowly. No, princess, he said. I just sat down. You changed everything. You decided to share. In the highest chamber of the station, the old empress looked out the great window at the silver stars. She held a small piece of bread in her hand. She broke it in two and she ate her half slowly. To the shared table, she whispered, and to the human who taught us how to be human. Far below, in the bright warm hall, the laughter and music went on long into the night, and the princess, who had once dined alone in golden silence, sat surrounded by her people, holding the hand of a poor mechanic. She was forever changed. The end.